Truly, you two, this is both a pleasure and an honor for me to speak to the two of you. Why don't we dive right in? Melissa, I'd like to ask you if we could pick up on the song you just sang.
Yeah.
What does freedom mean to you, and what does it look like?
Freedom means that your voice is heard, that there is a place for you on the stage of life. It would look like that we would respect everyone, regardless of their station, regardless of how they got here, regardless of their background, regardless of their song and their story. And so for me, freedom really is that place where so much of that happens on the stage of jazz, where we can come at the song from different angles. But my voice counts as much as your voice. And so freedom doesn't mean I get to stand in front of you, on top of you. Doesn't mean I have to walk behind you, but I'm going to walk beside you. And we are all going to have a place on that stage called life.
It's an image we use here a lot, which is to walk alongside of.
Yeah.
And not leading, not pushing, but walking alongside.
That's right.
It's a resonant sort of image, isn't it?
It is, and I think that it's not one, I think it's something that we're all coming to understand, that that's really what equity means, right? That's really what it means to be free, is that you are walking by someone's side, and they are walking by your side. And I think that is a different understanding of what it means to be free.
Thank you. Christian, you have any thoughts on that? What does freedom mean? What does it look like?
I would like to add along that wonderful description of freedom. I also believe that faith is freedom. I find that people who have a very deep faith in something greater than themselves have a certain freedom and have a certain peace and a certain joy and faith that goodness, positivity can fuel all in life.
So what I hear you saying is maybe there's a little bit of, once we take ourselves out of the equation, that's actually freeing.
I feel like life becomes a lot more bearable when you take yourself out of the equation.
Or at least the center of the universe.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Exactly. Okay, I have like all these musical questions I want to ask you all, if you don't mind.
All right.
After watching you sing today, Melissa, and I was, this is what it is, I was watching a YouTube video, Christian, from like the Blue Note from like a couple of weeks ago. Was it the Blue Note?
With Robert Glasper? That
Yes.
one?
Yeah.
Okay,
And you were wearing a baseball hat. I'm getting somewhere with this. Trust me. So you were wearing a baseball hat, and it got me thinking. I've got a buddy who's a former Major League Baseball player. He's a great hitter, and I used to ask him. I said, "So what was it like? Like what was batting like for you?" I said, "Was it like because some like really great hitters will say, well, the ball looked like a volleyball.
Right,
You know, it was like big, or it was really slow, or you know, they just see it differently." He said, I just always felt I could do whatever I wanted to with the ball. And so I was thinking about you two while I was watching you perform. Like, when you're singing, Melissa, what do you see? What do you feel? Like, what's the experience of making music?
Well, it's freeing. It really does feel the one place that feels weightless. Now, my instrument is not always the same day in and day out, and that certainly can bind me right to and makes it real and tether me to this earth. But in a way, singing, and I'm sure we all feel that way. That's why we all sing in the shower and in the elevator and in the car. It's freeing, and I think music takes you to that place where there are no words. It takes you to that most spiritual place, that inner place, that soul. And so for me, it's very freeing and it's very elevating. And then when you look out and see the joy, you hope that's what you're going to see on people's faces, then you know and you hope you're bringing them to that really special place. Abby Lincoln called it that music was the magic. And that was that magical place. And so when I can sing, I can tap into that.
Do you transcend technique?
Well, lately, yes. I mean, I think technique is really important.
Yeah.
Those are the tools that you need to go in and be able to be in any situation. I don't sing nearly as much as I used to and would love to, and Christian will tell you not enough. But, some of our greatest performers didn't have the greatest technique. And even some of our great, great performers, in later life, their technique diminished so greatly, but yet they actually seem to take us further with less. And what does that say? When you can get further in life with less. In a way, in some ways I look at the pandemic and we learned that maybe we didn't need as much as we thought we needed to be free. And I think some of our greatest singers didn't have all of the technique in the world, but they could take us so far along.
Can you think of any examples?
Yeah, I mean, I look at, great Frank Sinatra, that he would sing. But later in life, he didn't have the same
didn't have the
instrument,
chop,
right? He didn't have those chops, but man, he could still deliver and still, make you feel so beautiful with what he was emoting, because it was the story. And of course, there was Billie Holiday, with her most diminished voice at the end, was speaking volumes, volumes in what she had to say.
Every word.
Every single word mattered. Every single word seemed to transport us somewhere. And then we're in awe of those great technicians who have tremendous voices on their horn or off. But at the end of the day, it is about moving us from one place to another. And an artist might be able to do that just by drawing in pencil, and a singer like Billie can do it with a limited range. And I think that tells us that we can do more with less. And I think that is a powerful lesson to learn. That
I want to explore that a little bit more. Let's come back to that, though. Christian, what do you think? What's it like when you're playing?
One of the things that can be dangerous is that, particularly when you're talking to a younger musician or someone who's interested in music, it's very true. You hear certain artists who, once they get to a place in their life, if we're lucky enough to get as old as someone like Sinatra or Ella Fitzgerald, your body can't do what it did when you were 20 or 30 years old. So, your technique, like Melissa says, starts to erode. It starts to erode, and you then rely on the emotion, which, not saying they didn't do that before when they had great technique, but now that becomes much more important because you don't have the technique that you used to have. Now here's the dangerous part. When you hear a younger musician hear us saying this, and they'll say, "Oh, well, perhaps I don't need to practice as hard as I've been doing."
not the message.
Because you hear a lot of younger musicians, and it's frustrating because someone like Whitney Houston, oh, that was a gift. That was a God-given, nobody can sing like that. Well, no, but you can practice to get that good. Whitney Houston sang every day. She sang in church all the time. She did background vocals before she became a big icon. So yes, she was honing her skills. She was in the woodshed every day, like, I gotta practice, I have to get in tune. Everybody wants to get lucky. But they don't want to work hard at practicing that technique. For me, technique is no different than learning learning English. You know what I mean? And I think that same concept can be applied to speaking, because you hear people use big words. You hear them enunciate well. A lot of people go, so what? So what? What that word means. I'm not going to learn that word because I can communicate. I got feeling. Right. So I think as much as we really need to connect with people on an emotional level, you need technique to be able to read and see how to tap into a certain emotional thing. Like emotion is just not, you just don't get that in a vacuum. You gotta practice.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I
Gotta
mean?
be a practitioner.
That's right.
I'd tell you, it's funny. In our world, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
With preaching, it's you have to put in the work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to put in the work, but then you have to let it go.
Yes.
right.
It's kind of a
Yes.
it's kind of a Zen thing, right? You got to do the work,
Right.
do the woodshed,
Right.
but then when you get up there, you got to let it go.
There's a famous, I can't remember, I'm paraphrasing, but there's this great Michael Jordan quote.
Yeah, I know what you're about.
Yeah, when he apologizes, he said, perhaps I made it look too easy. Maybe you guys think I actually didn't work at shooting free throws.
Yeah.
Like I practiced hard at that.
And I think he also said something to the effect of, like when he was older in his career, he said, my brain knows exactly what to do. After all this time, my brain knows exactly where to be,
Yep.
what to do.
Yep.
He said, my body can't always get me there.
Right.
That muscle memory.
I love that. Let's explore just music itself, because you just mentioned that, whether the music takes us to this place.
Yeah.
How does and so I've been lately. I've been really into listening to Hindustani classical ragas. Okay, like really, I've gotten into that. Like
Okay.
Say that again.
Hindustani classical ragas.
Oh, goodness.
This is
Yeah.
like
Yes.
Ravi Shankar kind of,
Yes.
right? Just really beautiful music, and it.
Write that down.
Well, one
check that out
one of
ourselves.
our students actually plays saxophone and plays ragas on his
really? On his horn?
saxophone. Exactly,
Wow.
and he's a tabla player.
Sweet.
So
Sweet. I gotta meet him.
It's beautiful.
But it's like how does that music just transports me? So much music of different kinds and in different stages of my life has done that thing. How is it that music does? Why does music do that to us? Like, where does it take us? And it does. I mean, I think we'd all say we've had those moments where the
Right.
hair just stands up on our
Right.
arm, just when we
Right.
hear a note, right?
That's right.
What is that place?
Well, I mean, I think music in itself is the first language, right? I think the first language is sound, is music. It's not the word. And so I do think that even if you're listening to the drums and you're listening to African drums, and you can be in a trance. Christian did a tour many years ago of trance music in Morocco. And it was so, people were in this trance listening to this music that transported all of us. And I want to say, I think you don't even have to be born of that music or know that music. And so I think that music is the highest calling of the spiritual. It is of this world that lifts us into a spiritual world. And I think it is the frequencies of sound that just emanates through your body. And I think so much of what we try to do in life is analyze something, understand something, grow from that. And absolutely, but I think when you listen to a piece of music and it transports you to that first time you fell in love, right? Or that the music that comforts you when someone passes, or the music that gives you sheer hope for tomorrow, right?
At some level, that's mystery, isn't it?
It is a mystery, and that's why I keep coming back. I love her song. The music is the magic of a secret world. It's a world it's within, and it's a world that you get to own for yourself and everybody in this room, right? I can't, and maybe I can listen to what you're listening to and not be transported in the same world. But I do think music is that special place, and I think that's why, in our deepest times of suffering, certainly we call the politicians. Yes, we do. And but what do we really call? We call the artists, right? We look for the poet. We ask for the singer, the painter and then we call upon the preacher to help us bring this all together. I think art is truly powerful, and I think that's why in many ways it is the antidote for these times right now, is to tap into that deeper place of being.
How would you describe these times we're in? Christian, how would you describe these times?
There's a lot of catchwords and a lot of descriptions that, we're in times of turmoil, we're in times of change, we're in times of transition, social uprising. But I find that this is a period of opportunity. I look at this as an opportunity for us to put out the fires with love, because I think as human beings, oftentimes we tend to put out fires with a bigger fire, and then everything just winds up burning, and nothing is salvaged, and then it somehow feels strong to say, well, let's rebuild from zero, but there's already so much great stuff here that is being obscured by all this fire. So for me, I feel like whatever social, cultural fires are going on in our world right now, if we could just put some water on those fires, meaning love and faith. I go back to faith again, so much can be discovered with that, as opposed to the sort of let's show them we're right kind of thing, I've never minded being wrong, but make a case. I'll listen to you. Don't beat me over the head with
Your
what
thing.
you think is right. Just make your point, and I'm always I'm a bass player. I have to listen to what everybody else is playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you
By
do.
temperament, right? And by instrument and
That's
temperament. Right?
That's right.
His
It's like-
vocation calls upon him.
Did you choose the instrument or did the instrument choose you?
I think the instrument chose me.
Yeah.
It runs in the family. Both my father and my great uncle are bass players as well. So I'm in the family business.
Oh, okay.
I like that.
How about you? Did you choose voice or did voice choose you?
Yeah, the voice chose me. I started as playing the bassoon, actually, in junior high and high school. And they called it the burping bedpost. Yes, they did. It's a beautiful instrument, but
That's a great description.
right? It's long, slender,
Never heard that before.
And when you're in junior high, it's just a bunch of long whole notes. You gotta hang in there for some good repertoire. But my family, my parents, my father loved music, so music was everywhere all the time. And so I had a great love for music, and then I started studying what I call light classical when I was in junior high and high school, and began to fall in love with music really when I met jazz and I heard the great singers emote. But I would say for me that this time is, I think we struggle with sacrifice at this time. And, I don't even know if it's a word that it's embedded right in the church, right? The sacrifice and the sacrifice of
It's the
Jesus.
very heart of the church.
The ultimate, right?
Yeah.
These last couple of years of just, what are you going to sacrifice for us all to make it through? What are we going to sacrifice? And I think in this country in particular, and I'm Canadian, by the way, I'm from Alberta, Canada. So
Oh, you're the
I like
sister
to
from-
claim
from
that a little
Alberta.
bit. Yes, I am. My parents are American, but my father played professional ball
Okay.
in Canada. But that word of sacrifice just seems to be resonating with so much of our struggle. Just things like, will you wear a mask? Will you stand back? Will you get a vaccine? Will you not? What will you sacrifice for someone else? What will you, you know, we talk about making the pie bigger. Well, we're all about making the pie bigger. 'Cause that means we don't sacrifice anything. You just make it bigger. We'll make it bigger, and then you can come and we can all come. But it's different when you have to say, no, you have to give up something. You have to give up something to allow someone else their rightful space. And I think that's where we really are, you know.
Why are we struggling with that? So,
Well, I don't think we have a culture that makes you sacrifice anything. You know, in this country in particular, we don't sacrifice a great deal. And having the pleasure of traveling, that's not embedded globally. There's so many sacrifices that others in other countries have to make. The sacrifice that they have to make to feed their village, to the sacrifice that they make to live, to get their children educated, who have to walk long ways. I mean, there's there's not a lot of sacrifice, and until we grapple, I feel, with this notion of what will you give up so someone else can stand by your side. We're going to be here for a long time, and you know, will you pollute a little less? You know, what are you going to, you know, and I mean, we're hearing it everywhere. Just what will you give up? That's why I was so thrilled to come here and talk to you today. And that's really what we're trying to teach at the Jazz House is move over and make some room for someone else. And when you do that, we found over and over again just the richness that makes. And so, yeah,
I'm going to come back to the Jazz House in a second and have you tell us about that.
Yeah.
Christian, what have you seen around the world as you've traveled?
Yeah, I find I don't like bandwagon jumping, but I will have to say that I don't find the rest of the world quite as petulant as America. I find America to be a perpetual 18-year-old.
Okay, quote that.
Yeah.
Put that down.
We are perpetual high school seniors. We refuse to grow up. We always we believe in what we believe in, and we're not going to listen to the other person. We don't often practice what we preach, and I think that's what Melissa's talking about when it comes to sacrifice. Because I also feel that in our culture, there's the idea of sacrifice is conditional. It's like, you have more than me, so you should sacrifice. You know, it's like a scale of sacrifice. Nobody really wants to put into practice what they believe in. At least that's what I find here. Actually having traveled the world and gone to places like South America and Japan and Eastern Europe, Western Europe, I just don't. I find people to be a little more grown up emotionally around the world. Yeah, we're always we're rah rah sis boom ba in America perpetually.
It's kind of a scary thought because we're also the biggest kid.
Yeah, yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Kind of embarrassing.
Wow.
Well, with that comes great obligation.
Yeah.
For, you know, that we should be really the stewards, and doing a better job of that. I mean, we're not saying anything. I mean, we've all journeyed through, you know, almost 2 years of this, right, through the pandemic, and all that it has brought to bear in terms of sacrifice, in terms of really the disparity that we already knew was there, right? But again, what are we going to sacrifice to really make a change? And really, when are we going to understand that some of these problems are things that we have the choice to change? And that's really deep when you really realize that no, you don't have to have 100,000 young people, 42% increase in homelessness in young people in New York. That's a choice.
Right.
We don't have to live with that.
Right.
So what does that say when we do?
We're making a choice
We're making a choice.
Right.
and accepting it.
Accepting that. And I think that's, that's why we're all here today, because we're all making a different choice and doing the hard work that you do at your church.
Well, let me then ask you, tell us something about the program. Tell us about the Jazz Kids thing. Tell us about that.
Well, thanks. I'm going to keep it short. But
No, take
Jazz House really, we're now about 20 years. And I realized looking back, well, I was first asked to do the Jazz House Kids do a program for WBGO Radio. And they said, come do a program. And I thought, great, I'm going to bring in my great band and we're going to play. And they said, well, we'd like you to do something more than that. And I said, more than that? That's what I do. And, well, that can be the mother of all inventions is, tough, tight moments like that. And I thought about what I loved about jazz. And this was this common song that we could sing wherever we go in the world. And I decided that we would build a jazz house. And we would fill our tool belt with all of these tools that we need, starting with just listening to one another. A lot of jazz can happen if you're not listening. And so we did. It was a really kind of a glorious experience for me. And somebody was in the audience and who headed the arts programming in Newark and asked me to do this program that I had developed. I said, sure. But fast forward 20 years, and at some point I realized that Jazz House really answered a call for me from when I was a child. And my parents were married in the mid-50s, and my mother is Italian, and my father's African-American, and he was all-American football. And they fell in love 12 years before Loving versus Virginia. And
That's why you grew up in Canada.
and that's why I grew up in Canada.
Yeah.
My mother's family divorced her. The head of the dean for her school sent her home, back to Queens. She finally eloped and married my father. And the very first night, he was brought to the police. They eloped in Chicago where it was legal. And that night they brought him down to the precinct and harassed him. And so at that time, my parents decided, even though he was, the Green Bay Packers had asked him on the team, he decided to move to Canada, that he felt that would be a better place to raise their family. But I think Jazz House began to answer that call for me again to have a place, right? And my family didn't have a place for so long. And there was just so much hatred and so much violence and such a struggle for our family to exist. And so when I started singing and playing and recording and started working with young people, I realized there was my calling, that I could open the doors through the Jazz House
And make a home.
and make a home for so many people, right? So when you come to the Jazz House, we have a program for kids with Down syndrome and modified instruments for kids with autism. All kids, jazz kids can be a little on the fringe, and they're welcome there. It's not about your age, it's about what you can blow through your horn, and so you're placed where you are. And I don't mean to make it sound perfect, but it is a place where I think young people can truly come in and be of age, come to age, and learn about being a community and learn about getting ready to harness what you need in life. So many of those great skills that they're going to need in this 21st century are on that bandstand. And then, but also, have a place where you're listening to that solo and wow, how did he get to that? That is really out and different, and you're right up the middle. And so Jazz House became that place. And I think what we're really proud of now, years and years later, is that so many of our alums, they come back and they they help play it forward for others. And through doing what we do with music mentoring, education, and leadership, we can then put on concerts and festivals so young people can see when they take their gifts that they have honed and worked on, that they can help change the community around them. And so we say that a lot. I hope it's true. I think I've witnessed it. And by making things like the festival, no tickets required, we can see what it means, the richness of our diversity. And lastly, I just think that it's a common song. And so, you know, we can get above our differences because we're coming together in a common place.
Through the music.
Through the music. And then you can start, how did that young man who came here in this Tesla and this one who took 3 buses, and, you know, you start to see them come together in a really meaningful way, not just, you know, in where their friendships and their friend circle has changed. So that's what we do at the Jazz House. I feel that music is that conduit for them to gain those skills so they can go out in the world and be community leaders and global citizens. That's what we're trying to do there.
I mean, that's pretty profound because, Christian, like what you were saying, you're not going to argue someone into your position or to friendship even. You're not going to argue them into it. Yeah. But through something like music, you can actually come together, and they can become friends. Some sort of, you might say, some sort of common service or common goal. You know.
You know, looking back, my aunt just passed. My mother passed, and so the last of her family, 96 years old. And I'm looking just a few weeks ago at the photo album, and I'm turning page by page. My grandfather had a butcher shop at Astoria. Came through Ellis Island. No one looks like us, you know, turning page by page. And then there we were. My father died when I was young. My mother with her 3 children looked like me. And there's they didn't have any experience for that, right? They didn't have a place for that. And it's hard to get above your experience, right? It's hard to really get above your experience and understand what it feels like to be someone else. And so I think music lets us come together at a real safe place and have to learn and be humbled by the experience of learning. And through that, then we get to hear about other people's stories, and then they're not so different after all. They care about many of the same things.
You have this great line on your website. You said that we know that music creates bonds and builds communities.
Yeah.
Music builds communities. Yeah. Christian, let me ask you, what is a good community? What does it do?
I feel good communities understand what the common goal is. You don't have to agree on how to get there, but you do have to agree on what the destination is. I find that any group of people, any culture of people, they tend to have an understanding on what our commonalities are. Yes, we have differences inside of that, but we all can agree that this is what we're trying to accomplish, whatever that may be. You know, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but the community is strong. And I feel that the music community, particularly, excuse me, there's something intangible that is magical. You know, Melissa referenced Abby Lincoln's song, "The Music is the Magic." One of the beautiful things about creating art is that it's subjective, but you do need to, here we're referencing this again, you do have to hone your skills. You know what I mean? So you can listen to someone like John Coltrane, and John Coltrane means different things to different people, but there is a commonality in all the music world that man was a genius.
Yeah.
There was something about his music that takes you to a certain place. some might say, well, that's not really my thing, but I do agree that was a bad man.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that's one of the beautiful things about creating art, be it music, poetry, dance, acting, whatever it is. There's something intangible that relies on a certain balance of the head and the heart. You know what I mean? That I think is just beautiful. Unlike sports, I mean, your father being a football player, I was thinking about the community that he built with all of his teammates, and I think of professional athletes that play on the team, they're probably bonded for life, but there's something about sports that your career is very short. You have a certain window in which you have to really rely on your skill, and then that's over. You got to find something else. With music, you can create that your whole life, and you can create with the same people you created with. I mean, Michael Jordan's never going to play basketball with Scottie Pippen again. They can be friends. Well, probably not after Scottie.
Not
after
Scotty's book.
Right.
Sorry.
But I think of someone like the great pianist Benny Green. We've been friends for over 30 years and still playing together, and I see no reason to think why we won't be playing together 30 years from now. Right. God willing, we live that long. But that's the beautiful thing about music.
Is it speaking of Coltrane? Is it true, or is the story legend when he was kind of, I guess, when he was with the Miles Quintet?
Yeah.
And he was working on the giant steps. He was working, and he played these really long solos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Really long.
Yeah.
And Miles went over to him after one, and he said, "Man, you gotta like cut that down."
Right.
His Miles. I'm doing my Miles imitation.
Yeah.
And Coltrane said, "Well, I just have all these ideas I need to get out," and he said, "I just don't know what to do." He said, "Take the horn out of your mouth."
That's it.
Is that true?
That's absolutely true. And consequently, the great Lou Donaldson, who just turned 95 years old, he always says things like, it's hard to quote Lou Donaldson without doing his voice. Because he has a very high-pitched voice like that. And it just, everything he says just becomes automatically funnier, And he's very much old school. Like, he was not going to go with the trends. He's like, see, Coltrane, he ruined it for everybody because all these saxophone players now think they can take 15-minute solos. They didn't do that before Coltrane.
Hey, speaking of which, another random detour, but so when I saw that you were, here comes our handler.
Is the hook coming?
When I saw that you're the artistic director of Newport,
Yes.
I instantly went to 1956 and Paul Gonsalves, Duke Ellington's solo.
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell us that story?
Tell us that.
Sure. Well, there's so much in that story. The Newport Jazz Festival started in 1954, and when Duke Ellington performed there in 1956, hard to believe, he was sort of in somewhat of a down period in his career. The big band era had died a pretty hard death after the war, and very few big bands were thriving at that time. Not even Count Basie had a big band in 1954. So, Duke was, doing concerts here and there and, being on the road perpetually as he was throughout his whole career. So when he played Newport in 56, George Wein, the founder of the Newport Jazz Festival, asked Duke, said, well, what are you going to do? Duke Ellington said, well, what do you mean, what am I going to do? I'm going to play what I always play. And George said, see, that's why your career is where it is right now. He said, man, you're one of the most prolific composers in the world. You're outliving Beethoven. Why don't I give you, I guess he, urged him to write a piece specifically for the Newport Jazz Festival. And they played this piece called Crescendo and Diminuendo in blue. And you know, it got to swinging. It had this tenor solo by Paul Gonsalves. And I guess during his solo, a woman got up and started dancing while the band was playing. And you know, as they say in our business, all you need is one. This woman started dancing. Another woman thought, oh, well, if she's dancing, I'm going to dance too. And it was just a domino effect. People got up, started dancing and shouting, and Paul Gonsalves' solos just started getting heated, and people turned around like, yeah, start egging them on, and an outright party broke out. And it's one of the longest and greatest moments in the history of jazz.
Yeah.
And of course, Duke Ellington wound up had a second wind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get one more. Can I get one more? Yes. Melissa, to you. Talk about community. What does community need? Can I read you something and ask you to sort of reflect on it? And this goes to a little bit, Christian, what you were just saying. This is from Wallace Berry, the writer. He says, by community, I mean the commonwealth and common interests, commonly understood, of people living together in a place and wishing to continue to do so. To put it in another way, community is a locally understood interdependence of local people, local culture, local economy, and local nature. A community identifies itself by an understood mutuality of interests, but it lives and acts by the common virtues of trust, goodwill, forbearance, self-restraint, compassion, and forgiveness. If it hopes to continue long as a community, it will wish to, and will have to, encourage respect for all its members, human and natural. Mm-hmm. It will encourage respect for all stations and occupations.
Yeah, yeah. So community takes care of each other, right? Community is that place of choice. Community is that coming together, and I think that's really beautiful. I'd like to take that piece and read more of it. So that's the Jazz House, right? But that is, at the heart of it is people have to have the desire to be a part of it and to live by those tenets, right? Of circulating the dollar 28 times before it leaves the community, right? And taking care of someone's children when someone's sick, or watching over, and having some of those rules that we're going to all live by, and we're gonna make sure that people know when they cross the line. But at the end of the day, community. And I just look at this wonderful audience today, and I just see people who want to be here. They want to be in this conversation. They want to be of this conversation. They've chosen to. And I think that's what's so vital. And if we can replicate that, right? And if we can replicate that, is that, and realize that we have a choice to make community, and we can make it, and we can expand that community, and we can grow. And again, it goes back to the sacrifice, but right. You will sacrifice for your family. Hopefully you'll sacrifice for that community. And imagine if we can make that community ripple a little wider, a little further, right? You know what I mean? Instead of just that tight little neighborhood, right, or just in your house. But let's think about community really as that global community, because now we're making decisions that will impact our children's right. future, right? So community isn't just in my house anymore. Community isn't just in my
born yet.
That's right. That's correct. And it's not just our neighborhood anymore. And we really have to, and that's harder to handle. That's harder to really handle, is to think about community isn't even here yet. That's deep, what you just said.
He talks, sorry. Barry talks about community. He said, you can't conceive, though. He says, when you start thinking, when you go to community as global, he says, if you can't really conceive of that until you've actually practiced it locally.
Local, yeah.
He said it's an abstraction,
yes,
until you've actually done it.
Right.
Which is something we're trying to do here.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's all real progress is local progress. If we just but then
But then it can go out.
then it can go out and ripple.